Choosing between the IELTS and CELPIP can be difficult. Both tests assess your English proficiency, but they have significant differences that could impact your score. If you're trying to decide between the IELTS and the CELPIP, this video is for you. We'll compare both tests so you can make the best decision. Let's get started. One of the biggest differences between the CELPIP and the IELTS is how you take them, and this can definitely influence your decision. But before we take a look at that, let me clarify one point. When I say IELTS, I'm referring to the IELTS General Training Test, not the IELTS Academic. If you're planning to take the IELTS for Canadian permanent residency, only the General Training version is accepted. Now, let's check out how you can take the tests. The IELTS gives you two choices. You can take it on paper or on computer. This is great because if you prefer writing by hand, you can choose the paper test. And if you prefer typing on a keyboard, you can choose the computer test. The CELPIP is different. You can only take it on computer. So if you don't like typing on a keyboard, the CELPIP might not be the best choice. Next, let's compare how long each test takes. The IELTS test runs about 2 hours and 45 minutes in total. The CELPIP, on the other hand, takes approximately 3 hours, so the timing difference is not huge. However, there is one crucial difference. If you take the CELPIP, the speaking test is done in the same sitting. By contrast, you can choose to have the IELTS speaking test on a separate day. And this is an advantage because you are likely to be more focused if you don't have to take all sections at once. In particular, in the CELPIP, the listening, reading, and writing sections come before the CELPIP speaking test. Consequently, you might be quite tired when you start your speaking test. So if you're someone who gets tired after long periods of concentration, the IELTS might work better for you. If you prefer to get everything done at once, the CELPIP could be more convenient. Now, let's look at each section in detail to understand the key differences between the IELTS and the CELPIP. Let's start with the reading section. Both tests assess your reading comprehension, but they do it quite differently. The IELTS reading section contains 3 passages, with a total of 40 questions to be completed in 60 minutes. These passages progress in difficulty. The first is the easiest, and the third is the most challenging. The texts come from notices, advertisements, company handbooks, official documents, and general interest articles, materials you'd encounter in everyday life. What makes IELTS unique is the variety of question formats. You'll encounter many different question types, such as multiple choice, summary completion, and matching questions. For example, you might need to match headings to paragraphs or complete a summary with information from the text. The CELPIP reading section, by contrast, has 4 parts with different types of text to be completed in 55 to 60 minutes. Each part contains between 8 to 11 questions, for a total of 38 questions. All questions are multiple choice. This makes it a lot easier to prepare for the CELPIP reading test. If you take the IELTS, you must know many question types, because otherwise you may have difficulties answering them. If you take the CELPIP, you only have to prepare for multiple choice questions. Next, let's examine the writing section. In the IELTS writing test, you have to complete 2 tasks. Task 1 requires you to write a letter of at least 150 words. It could be formal, semi-formal, or informal based on the situation presented. You might need to write a letter requesting information, explaining a situation, or making a complaint. For example, you might be asked to write a letter to your landlord explaining problems with your apartment and requesting repairs, or write to a friend about plans for an upcoming visit. Task 2 asks you to write an essay of at least 250 words in response to a point of view, argument, or problem. You can get many different question types here, such as agree-disagree questions, discussion questions, advantages-disadvantages questions, and so on. The CELPIP writing section also has 2 tasks but works quite differently. Task 1 requires you to write an email that's usually about solving a problem or making a request. You must write 150 to 200 words. For instance, you might need to write an email to a manager explaining why you deserve a promotion, or email a service provider about an issue with their product. Task 2 requires you to respond to a survey question by giving your opinion on a topic. Here you also have to write 150 to 200 words. As you can see, task 1 of the IELTS and the CELPIP are pretty similar. One time it's a letter, the other time it's an email. But task 2 is quite different. If you take the IELTS, you must know how to write an essay for many different question types. If you take the CELPIP, you only have to learn how to state your opinion and reasons for it. In comparison, the IELTS writing test feels more formal, while the CELPIP writing test seems more focused on practical communication. So if you're strong at formal writing, the IELTS might showcase your abilities better. If you prefer writing that reflects everyday communication, the CELPIP could be advantageous. By the way, if you want more videos on how to boost your CELPIP score, click the like button and write yes in the comments. If you want something else, tell me your video wish in the comments so I know what you want to see on this channel. Now, let's continue comparing the CELPIP and the IELTS so you can find the best test for you. Let's move on to the listening section. Here, the IELTS and the CELPIP really differ significantly. The IELTS listening test lasts about 30 minutes. It consists of 4 recordings with a total of 40 questions. You will see many different question types in IELTS listening. For instance, multiple choice, map labeling, form completion, and so on. What's important to note is that in the IELTS, you hear each recording only once and you answer questions as you listen. So you have to write down your answers while you're listening to the recording. This requires you to focus on 2 things at once, which can be challenging. The CELPIP listening test takes 47 to 55 minutes and consists of 6 parts. All questions are multiple choice. A key difference is that in the CELPIP, you answer the questions after the audio. You can also take notes during the test. In this respect, the IELTS listening test is more challenging because you must listen and write simultaneously. This can be quite stressful. With CELPIP, you can focus entirely on understanding the audio first, then choose your answers afterward. However, the CELPIP listening section is much longer, which requires greater concentration over time. So, if you're good at multitasking and prefer shorter listening sections, the IELTS might be better for you. Another difference is that in the CELPIP listening test, all speakers have Canadian accents. In IELTS listening, you may encounter a variety of accents. If you prefer Canadian accents and answering the questions after you have listened to the audio, the CELPIP might be more suitable. Now, let's discuss the speaking section. The speaking section is a deciding factor for many people when deciding whether to take the IELTS or CELPIP. The IELTS speaking test is conducted as a face-to-face interview with an examiner and lasts 11 to 14 minutes. The test is divided into 3 parts. In part 1, you answer general questions about familiar topics. In part 2, you have to speak about a particular topic using a prompt card. And in part 3, you have to answer more abstract questions related to the part 2 topic. The CELPIP speaking test, in contrast, is completely computer-based and takes about 15 to 20 minutes. You respond to on-screen prompts by speaking into a microphone. Your responses are recorded for later evaluation. It consists of 8 tasks, including giving advice, talking about a personal experience, and expressing opinions. This format difference may be crucial for your decision about which test to take. If you get nervous talking to a real person, you might prefer the CELPIP. But if you don't like talking to a computer, you may prefer the IELTS. If you want to take the CELPIP, subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon so you're notified when the next video comes out. If you want to take the IELTS General, check out my IELTS General channel where you can find many videos on how to boost your band score. The link is in the description. See you in the next video.